What happens when one of the most beloved classic JRPG collections comes back on Nintendo hardware, but the experience still feels a little stuck between preservation and modernization? Today on CtrlAble, I want to talk about Suikoden I and II HD Remaster from the perspective of a disabled Nintendo gamer, because this collection is doing some things very right, especially in terms of convenience, pacing, and accessibility adjacent quality of life features. But it also shows how far remasters still have to go when it comes to truly thoughtful player support. And honestly, that tension is what makes this release so interesting. On the one hand, Suikoden II is still widely seen as one of the greatest RPGs ever made. On the other hand, this remaster package still carries some old frustrations that can hit disabled players harder than they hit everyone else. So let's break down what works, what doesn't, and whether Suikoden I and II HD Remaster is actually worth your time on Nintendo platform. If you're new here, I'm CtrlAble, and on this channel we talk about gaming, accessibility, disability, and how games actually feel to play in the real world, not just how they review on paper. So if that sounds like your kind of conversation, make sure you're subscribed. Now let's get into Suikoden I and II HD Remaster. For anyone unfamiliar, Suikoden I and II HD Remaster, Gate-Rune, and Dunin Unification Wars brings back two classic PlayStation-era JRPGs from Konami. These are political fantasy RPGs centered around war, resistance, betrayal, leadership, and the gathering of the 108 Stars of Dust. That huge recruitable cast is one of the series' defining ideas, and it still helps the game stand out today. Suikoden I tells the story of a hero caught in the decline of an empire, while Suikoden II follows Ryu and Joey as a fragile peace collapses into war again. And from almost every perspective I've seen, reflected in the material here, the consensus is pretty clear. Suikoden I is good. Suikoden II is special. That is the heartbeat of this collection. The first game lays the groundwork. The second game sharpens the combat, improves the storytelling, raises the emotional stakes, and becomes the reason many people still talk about this series decades later. As a Nintendo player, this release matters for a couple of reasons. First, Nintendo platforms have always had a strong audience for RPGs, handheld play, and long-form story-driven games that you chip away at over time. Suikoden fits that energy well. Second, on Switch 2, Konami positioned this as its own version of the game with 1080p portable, 1440p docked, and 60 FPS, which is a noticeable step up over the original Switch's version 720p portable, 1080p docked, and 30 FPS target. That smoother performance may not sound like a huge deal for a turn-based pixel RPG, but in practice, smoother menuing, faster battle flow, and more responsive movement can make a big difference, especially if you're someone who gets fatigued by sluggish UI, repeated menu friction, or games that feel slower than they need to. That kind of responsiveness is not just a nice extra. For some disabled players, it can be the difference between a game feeling manageable and a game feeling exhausting. And this is where I want to be very specific. I wouldn't call Suikoden I and II HD Remaster a fully accessibility-focused release, but I would say it includes several features that are extremely valuable from an accessibility and usability standpoint. 1. Bell fast forward. This is a big one. Anytime a turn-based RPG lets you move combat along faster, it reduces repetition, cuts down on downtime, and helps players stay engaged without feeling bogged down. That matters if you deal with fatigue. It matters if repetitive animations wear you down. It matters if you want to enjoy the strategy and story without every random encounter dragging it down. 2 is autosave. even though the implementation sounds limited, especially since some criticism points out that it only occurs around save point space. The presence of autosave is still better than not having it at all. For disabled players, reduced punishment for interruptions is a real quality of life factor. If pain spikes, attention drops, fatigue hits, or you suddenly need to stop playing, systems like this matter. 3 is the conversation log. This is one of those features that should be in more RPGs. If you miss a line, forget a plot detail, come out and zone out for a minute, or need help recentering after cognitive fatigue, having a conversation log is useful. That's not flashy, but it is meaningful. 4 is adjustable difficulty. The collection includes difficulty settings that affect enemy HP and damage. That's important because disabled players are not one monolith. Some want the original challenge, some want less friction, some want to be able to shift their comfort level depending on pain, energy, focus, or reaction capacity that day. Options matter. And lastly, 5. Dash and speed move and improvement. Being able to dash from the start and generally move through the games more efficiently may sound small, but in a long RPG, small friction adds up fast. Anything that reduces wasted time, menu drag, or unnecessary back and forth help. And that's one of the key themes with this remaster. A lot of its best improvements are not glamorous, they're practical. Now here's where the disabled gamer angle becomes especially important, because a game does not have to be bad to be still frustrating. And based on the info here, Suikoden I and II HD Remaster absolutely still had friction points that can hit accessibility harder than the standard review score might suggest. Menus are still cumbersome, this comes up repeatedly. And honestly, cumbersome menus are not just an annoyance, they can quickly become an accessibility issue. If a player has brain fog, attention difficulties, hand pain, motor limitations, or gets worn down by too many menu layers and constant equipment shuffling, then poor menu design becomes more than a design quirk. It becomes a barrier. Inventory and equipment management remain clunky. That matters a lot in RPGs this long. Multiple sources here note that even with some improvements, the games still have awkward storage, organization, and item management issues. For some players, that kind of friction is just old school charm. For others, it's the exact reason they bounce off. Autosave sounds underwhelming in practice. Again, having it is better than not having it, but it only triggers when you're already close to traditional save functionality. That limits how useful and helpful it really is. Some quality of life upgrades feel uneven. Some example here is that Suikoden gets an optimized option for equipment in the second one, while Suikoden I reportedly does not. That kind of inconsistency stands out. If you're remastering a package like this, players are going to feel every place where convenience was added in one game but not fully carried over across the collection. The visuals may be divisive. Some people like the updated HP cleanup. Others think the new backgrounds and effects clash with the sprite work or feel overly glossy and less cohesive than they could have been. That part is more subjective, but it does matter when readability and visual clarity are part of the experience. For some disabled players, visual cohesion is not just about aesthetics. It can affect comfort, focus, and the ease with which you process what's happening on screen. Even with those issues, the reason this collection still matters is simple. Suikoden II sounds like it still absolutely lands. The story, the emotional weight, the political intrigue, the relationship between Ryu and Joey, and sense of hope, tragedy, responsibility, and community. friction again and again. That's the part people keep coming back to. And I think that's important from a disability perspective too, because sometimes accessibility conversations get trapped in systems alone, menus, subtitles, toggles, remapping, sliders, and all of that matters. But what also matters is whether a game feels worth the effort it asks from you. If a game is emotionally compelling enough, the players will often tolerate more friction than they otherwise would. Not because they should have to, but because the payoff feels meaningful. And Suikoden II is exactly that kind of game. It's the kind of RPG people remember for years, the kind of game people tie to major life memories, the kind of game that doesn't just entertain, it stays with them. That's powerful. Now, if you're specifically looking at the Switch 2 version, the value conversation gets a little more complicated. On paper, you're getting higher resolution, 60 FPS, cleaner image quality, smoother scrolling, faster filling menus, and non-existent load time. But there is a big catch. There is no upgrade path if you already own the Switch version. So if you already bought it once, buying it again at full price is a much harder sell. The improvements sound nice, but not necessarily transformational enough to justify a full repurchase for everybody. That said, if you're coming in fresh, you mainly care about the best feeling Nintendo version. The Switch 2 edition sounds like the stronger option. Another positive here is that the game received a version 1.0.3 update in May 2025, which addressed tech errors, stability issues, battle bugs, item issues, and added some additional settings. That included options like toggle BGM playback speed during battle speed up, turning footstep sounds on or off, changing dash input behavior, toggle autosave, and adding better item info and storage. That kind of post-launch support matters because it shows the collection was at least being refined after release. And again, many of those aren't headline features, but they make the play experience smoother. So here's my controllable take. Suikoden I and II HD Remaster is not a masterclass in modern accessibility, but it is a strong example of how quality of life features can make classic RPGs more approachable, even when a remaster still doesn't go far enough. For disabled Nintendo gamers, I think the experience comes down to this. If you can tolerate some old school menu clunks, some uneven modernization, and a collection that preserves a little too much friction in places, there's clearly something special here, especially with Suikoden II. But this is also the kind of release that makes me how often the industry still confuses preserving a game with supporting the people trying to play it. Those are not the same thing. A remaster shouldn't just make a game look cleaner. It should make the experience easier to live in. That means better menu design, better equipment management, better save flexibility, better readability, better comfort options, better respect for different kinds of players. Suikoden I and II HD Remaster gets part of the way there. I just don't think that it gets all the way there. As for the value, the pricing info you gave points a pretty interesting pitch. At $30 instead of $50, this collection becomes much easier to recommend, especially if you've never played these games before and want legal access to two important JRPGs in one pack. At that sale price, the flaws are easier to forgive. At full price, the conversation becomes more dependent on how much tolerance you have for classic RPG friction, and whether Suikoden II alone is enough to justify the cost? For many people, the answer is yes. But that's my take as a disabled Nintendo gamer looking at Suikoden I and II HD Remaster through the CtrlAble lens. If you played it, I want to hear from you. Did the quality of life changes make this collection easier for you to enjoy, or do the old menu and inventory frustrations still get in the way? And if you haven't played Suikoden before, does this remaster actually make you more interested in finally jumping in? If you enjoyed this breakdown, drop a like, subscribe to CtrlAble, and stick around for more conversations about gaming disability, accessibility, and how games really feel play. I'm CtrlAble, and I'll see you in the next one.